So let's continue our story of our IDL, which was our remnant VLDL. I just rewrote it here. So again, the receptors are going to be ApoB100 and ApoE because those were the remaining ones left. Now what's going to happen to this IDL? IDL is going to give some of its cholesterol to the liver and some of it is going to turn to our LDL. Now how will our liver recognize that this is IDL? Why would liver allow this IDL to dump its cholesterol inside the liver? Well, this has its ApoE. It's going to be, that's the one. Remember, ApoE was also the one recognized by liver when chylomicron wanted to dump its cholesterol here. The same mechanism works here. ApoE is going to be recognized by the liver. As a result, IDL will be able to dump its cholesterol in the liver for liver to use. Now, what kind of substances does liver use to, what kind of substances does liver make with this cholesterol? Well, let's say the liver wants to make bile acids, right? There's so many things that the liver can use its cholesterol for. So anyway, so from the IDL, it's going to dump some of its cholesterol in the liver. The rest of the cholesterol is going to be turned into LDL. So IDL is going to make its LDL. And what is going to be its receptor? Its receptor is going to be ApoB100. Wait a minute. What happened to our ApoE? Well, ApoE was already used when we tried to recognize, well, the liver tried to recognize that it needs to get cholesterol inside liver. So we lost our ApoE in that recognition. Now all we're left with is ApoB100. And this conversion from IDL to LDL is achieved by CETP, which stands for cholesterol ester transfer protein. So cholesterol ester transfer protein is going to convert its IDL to the LDL. Now, this LDL is going to divide its cholesterol into two compartments. 80% of this cholesterol is going to go to the liver again, and 20% is going to go to the peripheral tissue. So the 80% that is going back to the liver, how is it doing that? It does not have ApoE. How is this cholesterol ending up in the liver? That's because liver has this ApoB100 receptor. This recognizes this receptor and it binds to it. Once it binds to it, it takes up that cholesterol inside that liver. So let's talk about this binding and taking up of this cholesterol a little bit more in detail. So imagine that this layer, everything inside here is the liver, okay? And in the body of the liver, there is LDL receptors, which recognize ApoB100. So ApoB100 comes and binds to this LDL receptor, and that's how cholesterol is taken up inside the liver. Now, what does this cholesterol do? What does the liver do with this cholesterol? The liver can make cholesterol esters with this cholesterol, and the cholesterol esters can later be used to make bile acids. Too much cholesterol in the liver is going to downregulate LDL gene expression, because the more LDL is on the surface, the more cholesterol is going to enter. So if there is too much cholesterol being taken up in the liver, it's going to downregulate. That's why there's a negative here. It is also going to downregulate HMG-CoA reductase. HMG-CoA reductase is the enzyme that we use to make, that's the rate limiting enzyme for synthesis of cholesterol. So that is also going to be inhibited by our too much cholesterol in the liver. Cholesterol can also be made in the liver, obviously with HMG-CoA. Cholesterol can also be made from acetyl-CoA. So it's just an extra information of what is really going on with cholesterol in the liver. So after we have our LDL in the peripheral tissues, this LDL is going to be deposited all over the tissues, or it's going to be used by the tissues. Some of it is going to be deposited in the blood vessels, and some of it is actually going to be taken up in the liver. So that's the story of our LDL. Now let's talk about HDL for a second. For the sake of convenience, I drew another liver here because I didn't want to draw an arrow all the way down here. So imagine that the liver is close to our HDL, and this is our intestine. This orange box right here is our intestine. So what happens is HDL can be made from the intestine. Okay, HDL can come from the intestine, or it can come from the liver. And HDL is our good lipoprotein. It is protein rich, okay? It's our good lipoprotein. And how do we know something is a particular lipoprotein? It's by the receptor, like I have been mentioning from the very beginning. And we know that this is HDL because it has a receptor ApoA1 that is present on our HDL protein. Now, this is how HDL is made. HDL is converted to HDL that is cholesterol rich using the enzyme LCAT. Okay, using the enzyme LCAT. So how is our HDL, which was so rich in protein, suddenly get all this cholesterol? From the peripheral tissue. And how is the peripheral tissue getting all that cholesterol? From the LDL that it deposited. So these LDL, this cholesterol that has been depositing in our peripheral tissue, is going to be picked up by our HDL using the enzyme LCAT, which is, I believe, lecithin cholesterol acyl transferase. Okay, it's going to be picked up by our LCAT, and our HDL is going to be converted to cholesterol rich HDL. So see how HDL had this receptor ApoA1. Now HDL is going to have ApoA1 along with ApoE. We always know that every time there is something in the blood, ApoE comes and just sits on HDL, because ApoE is going to be recognized by the liver when HDL would want to dump its cholesterol onto the liver. So now what is this cholesterol rich HDL going to do with all this cholesterol? It is going to dump all its cholesterol back to LDL. And once LDL is getting all that cholesterol rich, all this rich cholesterol, the process is going to continue. 80% of that cholesterol is going to be dumped in the liver, 20% is going to be dumped in the peripheral tissue. That cholesterol is going to be picked up by our HDL, converting into poor rich HDL. Rich HDL is again going to dump its cholesterol onto the LDL, converting into poor HDL. Again, this kind of circle continues. So again, LDL is going to dump 80% of the cholesterol onto the liver, 20% on the peripheral tissue. The cholesterol from the peripheral tissue is going to be taken up by the poor HDL. The poor HDL is going to take up this cholesterol, convert into rich HDL. HDL is going to dump its cholesterol onto the LDL, and the process continues and continues. Now let's see what we're talking about a little bit slowly. So a cholesterol-rich HDL is going to use the same enzyme that IDL was using to convert it into LDL, which was CEPT. So this process is simultaneous, which I didn't draw before to kind of make things simpler. But now that we have the overall picture, the rich HDL is going to be converted to poor HDL, so cholesterol poor HDL, by the same enzyme CEPT, dumping most of its cholesterol onto the LDL, and the process continues. I think this is a good time as any to also mention that there are ApoB100 receptor in the peripheral tissue, which also recognize this this cholesterol coming from the LDL, which would take up that cholesterol and onto the peripheral tissue. So now I'm going to add one more layer of complexity to this whole diagram. See this rich cholesterol we have here? This can be taken up by liver. See, liver made cholesterol, liver made HDL, intestine made HDL. But a reverse process can also happen. HDL rich can go back to the liver using the SRB1 receptor. And SR stands for steroidogenic receptors. Okay, through steroidogenic receptor, HDL rich can be taken up in the liver. SRB1 is not only present in the liver, it's also present in the testes, it's present in the adrenal medulla, it's also available in the ovaries. So SRB1 is going to use These organs is going to use SRB1 to take up our good, rich cholesterol, HDL back in it, back in the liver and back into these organs.